Our moderators tonight will be George Carrillo and Veronica Vasquez. All of the candidates have been given the rules for tonight's debate, and without further ado, I'll be handing it over now to the moderators to conduct the format for tonight's debate.
Buenas noches. Good evening, everyone. Bienvenidos a todos ustedes por estar aquí en este debate en el de la alcaldía de la ciudad de Portland. Soy Verónica Vázquez y soy una de las moderadoras aquí con mi colega George Carrillo. Queremos dar una cálida bienvenida a todos nuestros candidatos, a nuestra audiencia en vivo y a todos los que nos están viendo en línea. Estamos transmitiendo el debate en vivo por el programa de Elemento Latino en Facebook y YouTube, así como en la plataforma de YouTube de Oregon Legacy. Hemos estado teniendo algunos problemas técnicos, pero teníamos en un momento 12,000 personas conectadas. 12,000 people were connected on Oregon Legacy. So we're having some difficulties, but we're trying to fix that. Y bueno, para comenzar esta noche es una importante oportunidad para escuchar directamente a nuestros candidatos sobre su visión para Portland y cómo planear abordar los problemas que enfrentan nuestra ciudad. Portland es un punto crítico y esperamos escuchar ideas claras y reflexivas sobre cómo avanzar. Quiero agradecer a Progreso Latino por elaborar las preguntas para este debate. El debate cubrirá varios temas clave y pediremos a todos que se mantengan el respeto y centren en los temas. Nuestro objetivo es tener una discusión productiva e informativa para todos. Candidatos sean concisos y directos en sus respuestas y a nuestra audiencia escuchen con atención y reflexión sobre lo que cada candidato tiene que decir mientras consideramos el futuro de Portland.
Hello everybody, thank you. My name is George Carrillo with Oregon Legacy. We're very happy to be here today. As you can hear the background noise from the street, we're in the heart of Portland today. I want to remind everybody though, today is 9/11. I think we can all remember what happened on that day. I was in my barracks and my life changed forever that day. I was serving in the military and then all of a sudden, living in Hawaii, patrolling the streets of Hawaii in case of an invasion in Hawaii because of Pearl Harbor. And it's those brave men and women that I want to be able to recognize, and also our firefighters and all of the loved ones that died during that time, and the towers, the people that sacrificed their lives. We have to remember they're the ones that ran into a building that was collapsing. 2 buildings. We have people fighting on airplanes that were fighting to live. And we live in a world that the reason that this country is great is because of our first responders and also because of our United States military. So let's never forget them. Let's never forget the sacrifice that they did for our country. And this reason we're here tonight, is to have this debate. And we can no longer be divided in our politics. Today is a debate where we're going to have 3 wonderful candidates talk about their platform. And we want to talk about the real issues. It's going to be a respectful conversation. We're going to keep them on track. We've had 12,000 viewers. I don't know how many we're at right now. We crashed the system because people out there care. And we're here today to represent not just the Latino community, but a community as a whole that wants to see Portland prosper again and be a vibrant city the way that we need it to be. So thank you, everybody. I pass it over to Veronica to ask the first question.
Candidatos, cada uno de ustedes responderá la siguiente pregunta. A partir del 2024, la población de votantes latinos en Oregon ha seguido creciendo, reflejando tendencias nacionales más amplias. ¿Cuánto del presupuesto y de los recursos de su campaña han destinado a llegar a las comunidades que no hablan inglés a través de comerciales, redes sociales, radio, anuncios, redes digitales o periódicos? Comisionada Rubio, empezamos con usted primero.
Thank you, and first I want to say thank you and to Progreso Latino and Veronica and George for hosting us tonight, and it's wonderful to see so many folks in the audience. This is a really important question because our population is growing, and in terms of our campaign's budget, what's really wonderful is that I have a very diverse and multicultural not only staff but volunteer base working for me, not only in my role as city commissioner, but also as a candidate. So while I don't know the exact number of the amount in my campaign, I can tell you that it is clearly a priority to me that I reach my own community. And as Latino Network Director in my previous role, I understood the real importance of making sure that we reach everyone in our community because we're often left out. And that's why at the city, I've always advocated to make sure that we have bilingual translation and accessible folks who actually speak our languages to reach out to us, as well as making sure to advocate in my first year for the bilingual pay differential to make sure that folks who work at the city get actually paid for their skills that they're using in their jobs to reach further into the community. So it's an important value. It's in my campaign and it's also in the work that I do, and I'm glad that it's there.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you for the question. Good evening, everybody, and thank you to Progreso Latino for this opportunity. The question's a great question to begin with because in preparing for this debate, it forced our campaign to take a hard look on what are we doing to reach the Latino voter. 10% of Portland is a Latino voter, an important and growing block of voters. So we went into the mode of changing our website, and I'm happy to say, if you go on to if you go on to keithwilsonformayor.com, it is now offered in Spanish. But that's really what this conversation was about, is to bring your voices forward. When it comes to other things that we're going to do as far as budgeting the campaign, we know that the Latino vote is a growing, important vote, especially in East Portland. We're committed to providing dedicated funding for that communication. I can't tell you about an amount, but just this event today has forced us to take a good hard look at who we need to reach. But I want to take one quick second as well. I'm a part of a group called the Oregon Progressive Group. We have been funding voter outreach for years and working with Piccoon. We do motor voter outreach, or we do motor voter registration, and a lot of these individuals are doing non-affiliated voters. What we're doing with our groups is to reach out and really help them over to the more democratic causes so we can reach more people in Portland, in our county, and in Oregon as well.
We just want to wait a few seconds to let the train pass.
I'll take an opportunity to say, we actually tried to close the road down, but the City of Portland government would not work with us with the fees that it cost. We didn't have the funding for it, and so it was close to $2,000 to be able to close the streets, and the mayor and mayor's office was not willing to work with us. But I think we can go ahead and move on.
All right. Buenos noches a todos. I want to thank Progreso for hosting today. And like every family birthday I have ever been to, we are on Latino time. So, mis abuelas eran de México. La primera lengua de mi padre es español. Mi esposa nació en Venezuela. Su madre es de Ecuador. Por las venas de mis hijos corre sangre latina. Needless to say, outreach to the Latino community is essential in this campaign. Our campaign is a website fully translated by a fluent speaker, reviewed by a native speaker. Spanish ads digitally have already been run out. We're going to do hundreds of calls in Spanish, much as like I did in my last campaign in 2022. And we expect to start a voter registration program. I believe it's already started for Spanish speakers in the city of Portland. So engaging with the Latino community, the Spanish-speaking community, is essential in this campaign. It's essential for the city of Portland, and look forward to the dialogue. Thank you.
I'd like to remind the audience to please not clap during this time. There'll be an opportunity at the end to clap for all the candidates. So we're going to go to our second round, which is around housing. Mr. Wilson, you have this question. Mr. Wilson, Portland has approximately 6,300 homeless individuals, including 2,500 who urgently need residential mental health services, a need that could cost an estimated $650 million to address. While you have pledged to end homelessness within your first year as mayor with a budget of $20 million, how do you plan to meet the complex needs of those requiring intensive mental health housing within this budget?
Thank you for asking that. So the note, George, you had said that we have 6,300 homeless, correct? But the real numbers are much higher than that. Just in the unsheltered homeless souls, the 20 or so that we see 100 yards from here, it's 5,394. The humanitarian crisis is so much bigger than just 6,300. And yes, mental health is a huge issue with that. But it's not just mental health, it's medical issues, it's addiction issues. It's all wrapped up into these individuals that are living in tents on the side of our roads. But the first level of care is bringing them inside and providing a safe night's rest, where we don't allow them to be out in unsafe, unsanitary, and dangerous conditions. And then, George, we find out, was it survival mode that they were experiencing that manifests and looks just like a behavioral health issue? When you have 5,000 people living on the street, not knowing where they're going to eat, not knowing where they're going to sleep, are they going to be attacked that night? It starts to look like mental health, and you can understand how your mental acuity is going to be affected. Once we bring them in and stabilize those individuals, like all the cities in the nation, other than a few on the West Coast, then we stabilize them, and then we determine what needs do they have. If it's a ride home, they're better served with their families. If it's a high acuity mental health, we're adding resources all the time. We know when we help care for people at night and provide that basic nighttime care, we stabilize them. Now you said, are we going to end unsheltered homelessness in that first year? And the answer is yes, because we know other cities have achieved that goal, and that same blueprint that they have in other nations, in other cities, those officials are working with me to help care for our community in Portland.
Comisionado,
If I'd like to remind the audience one more time, please, no clapping at this time.
Comisionado González, Portland sigue enfrentando una escasez significativa de viviendas residenciales asequibles, lo que ha llevado al aumento de los precios de las viviendas y ha dificultado que muchas familias puedan ser propietarios de un hogar. ¿Qué políticas específicas implementará para aumentar la disponibilidad de viviendas residenciales asequibles?
So I apologize, we have something going on here. I'm going to read the question in English. Commissioner Gonzalez, Portland continues to face a significant shortage of affordable residential housing, leading to increased home prices and making it difficult for many families to own a home. What specific policies will you implement to increase the availability of affordable residential housing?
Thank you for the question. So our single biggest gap in the generation of housing in our region is the failure really of the market to finance in Portland's current standing. There are a number of reasons for those, some of which are outside the city of Portland's control. But one of the pieces that has gone relatively well in recent years is the building of federally subsidized housing in the region, including through our Portland housing bond. What is failing miserably is a generation of market housing in recent years. There are a number of causes of that. I'm going to hit at some of the biggest levers we can pull in the city of Portland. First of all, we have a state law that requires permits to be reviewed in 120 days. When someone goes in the city of Portland right now, they have to sign a waiver for that of that state law. That's wrong. And as your next mayor, I'll put an end to that. We've got to hold ourselves accountable as a city to get permits through the system. Two, we have approaching 30 bureaus. Often that requires 28 sign-offs to get a permit through the city of Portland. We've got to streamline that and get it down either by service area or to logically consolidate the approval process to 4 or 5 primary sign-offs. We have gone through some permit unification in the city. I think that's going to help it. Last but not least, we need to look really closely at the subsidies we're providing and is it the right mix. That includes what we're doing through our TIF districts, that includes our affordable housing set aside, because we are not generating enough affordable or market rate housing or mid housing. That impacts every Portlander, regardless of income level, and we need a dramatic shift. Last but not least, your mayor needs to be a champion and attract capital to the city of Portland. With those signals, I think we can change the story.
Okay, we're moving on to the next question. I apologize, we're still having technical difficulties here on screen. Commissioner Rubio, the rising cost of rental properties in Portland is making it increasingly difficult for residents, especially young professionals and low-income families. How will you increase rental units and drive the price of rent down?
Thank you for the question. So it's no secret that we have a housing shortage in the city of Portland. And you know, I very much supported the governor's clarion call to all of the state to produce more housing units because we're facing a drastic shortage. We're already behind, and over the next 20 years, we're going to have to produce 120,000 new units of housing just to keep pace, and we're already behind. But at the heart of that, is suffering like those folks that actually are working people and working families. So we do need to do everything we can to build housing up all along the continuum. We need affordable housing, and the city definitely is focusing on that. We do also need middle housing and workforce housing so that people can afford to live and work in the city that they want to be in and don't have to drive so far for work or school every day. When I ran Latino Network, a nonprofit in town, so many times as we grew, as our staff grew, a lot of our staff had to actually live outside of the city of Portland because they couldn't afford to live here, and they were driving in from Beaverton or Salem or Gresham. So that part needs to change. We do have some levers, and my colleague mentioned a few of them that I brought to council. The first one was just today. It was a TIF report. And what TIF is, it's a tax investment finance mechanism that the cities use to create districts. And we, over the last year, worked really hard with the community and key stakeholders to develop key districts in the city, 6 of them, from downtown Portland all the way to the east side. And these very clearly identified districts collect revenue that we can then reinvest in housing. We can then reinvest in local businesses and the economy and infrastructure. So this is a critical tool that we will be able to use at the city.
Vamos a la ronda 3, Public Safety, Seguridad Pública. Comisionado González, dados los desafíos significativos que enfrenta Portland con el crimen organizado, como la trata de personas, la distribución ilegal de fentanilo y la actividad de pandillas, ¿qué estrategias específicas implementará para combatir eficazmente estos problemas y mejorar la seguridad pública?
So I'm going to repeat the question. Commissioner Gonzalez, given the significant challenges Portland faces with organized crime such as human trafficking, illegal fentanyl distribution, and gang activity, what specific strategies will you implement to effectively combat these issues and enhance public safety?
Toda la gente de Portland necesitan una ciudad segura y limpia. As with respect to strategies to deploy on public safety in these difficult cartels and organized crime. 1, we need 1,000 police officers in the city of Portland. We once had that number at a much smaller population. We got to grow our police force. 2, we need to reestablish both our community and business watch. This allows at the grassroots level, at the neighborhood level, at the business level, empowering our locals in our neighborhoods to take their safety to a certain extent in their own hands and to be proactive. 3, we know the substantial number of women are being trafficked in the tents and tarps on our streets. We know that there's substantial criminal behaviors engaged on our streets. Our police officers see it every single day. It's one of the reasons I stopped the distribution of tents and tarps by the city of Portland, that I stopped distribution of drug kits by city outreach workers. We have to be very direct on some of the very negative behaviors that are being generated in many of our encampments. Last but not least, When we're talking about cartels and organized crime, whether on the drug side or on sex trafficking, we absolutely need strong partnerships with the federal government. This city of Portland cannot win the war on fentanyl by ourselves. We need strong federal partners that are addressing issues at our border, that are addressing the interstate transport of both women and drugs. And we've got to have the feds help on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rubio, Portland Police currently has a 1.4 to 1,000 citizen ratio. And Portland Fire is 1.1 to 1,000 ratio, which both are lower than the national average. Given this disparity and ongoing concern about public safety, how do you plan to support both bureaus?
Sorry.
I'm going to repeat the question again. Portland currently has a 1.1 to 1,000 citizen ratio, and Portland Fire has a 1.1 to 1,000 ratio, which both are lower than the national average. Given this disparity and ongoing concern about public safety, how do you plan to support both bureaus?
Thank you for the question. So it is no secret that in our community, we have a problem with people feeling safe right now. And everybody deserves to feel safe in our community. And thank you. And one thing about the city of Portland, our number one one of our biggest responsibilities, I would say, is ensuring the public safety of our city and our residents. And that's why I'm very committed to doing everything I can to support our community and public safety system. And that means making sure that we have the capacity in our first responders, in police, in fire, in Portland Street Response, so that we have all the responders in the right roles. Right now, our city has grown, and over the last decade or more, we have not kept up with that capacity change. And so what I'm going to do as mayor when I'm there is to make sure that we have the capacity needed to match and right size our police force, right size our first responders, all of them, to the city needs of today. Right now, Chief Day is doing an assessment about what that right size is for Portland, and I trust Chief Day, and we've had numerous conversations about moving our police officers into a position to build more relationship to community, to have the capacity to be present in neighborhoods, walking the beat, meeting neighbors, and also having the supports in the offices, and also in all other first responder system, and making investments in our community-based organizations as partners with law enforcement and around city goals. And that's what I'm hoping to do as mayor, is to make sure that we make progress on those goals and that we get the right size force that we need to be safe.
Señor Wilson, durante la pandemia, Portland vio un aumento significativo en las tasas de violencia doméstica y homicidios, y ambas se mantienen muy por encima de los niveles previos a la pandemia, a pesar de las mejoras recientes. ¿Qué estrategias específicas implementará para proteger a las víctimas, responsabilizar a los agresores y garantizar que nuestras comunidades vean la reducción significativa de estos graves delitos?
So, Mr. Wilson, during the pandemic, Portland saw a significant rise in domestic violence and homicide rates, with both remaining well above pre-pandemic levels despite recent improvements. What specific strategies will you implement to protect victims, hold offenders accountable, and ensure that our community sees a meaningful reduction in these serious crimes?
Thank you, George. Would you please repeat that one more time?
Sure. During the pandemic, Portland saw a significant rise in domestic violence and homicide rates, with both remaining well above pre-pandemic levels despite recent improvements. What specific strategies will you implement to protect victims, hold offenders accountable, and ensure that our community sees a meaningful reduction in these serious crimes?
Thank you. So one of the things that my opponents did was we disbanded our gun violence reduction team. And we did that without a plan. And when we did that, it actually harmed the community it was designed to help. Portland had the highest gun fatality rate of Black Portlanders in the nation. When we did that, we pulled that resource away from the neighborhoods. While it was well-intentioned, what we've done with the city council is we've acted too quickly, too rash, without having a plan in play. We have to define a problem, measure it, analyze, and then put the improvement and then sustain and control that. As your mayor, we can't run and risk the city because of a change that we want before us. We must be intentional in who we're planning on helping.
May I rebut?
Yes.
I have
Go
it.
ahead, you have 1
Oh,
minute.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
We have, as I mentioned 2 questions ago, 5,394 people living on the street. And if you talk to any officer on the street now, they'll tell you a few years ago, they would go up and they would approach a homeless soul in a tent. Now, they will not engage because those tents are being used as traffic locations, dealers with guns. We've created a armed society that's running a lawless part of our community versus the lawful. We've created 2 types of societies. We've normalized a humanitarian crisis, and we're experiencing that, and we're witnessing that every day when we walk out in our city. And we've seen the increase in violence and domestic violence on our streets because of that. Last year, we lost 300 people on our streets, are unsheltered. This year, we're gonna lose 400 of them. If we provide basic nighttime care and bring back a city that's caring for one another, the dignity and the decency and the propriety of all of us working with one another, we'll bring that rate down. We'll reduce the guns that are on the street, and we will be a safer, protected community.
Ms. Rubio, you have 1 minute to rebut.
Thank
Please,
you.
audience, I'm going to ask you again, please do not clap during the debate. Go ahead, Ms. Rubio.
Thank you, and I apologize, Keith.
No problem.
So I just want to correct the record that I've heard this talking point several times that your opponents eliminated the gun violence reduction team. I just want to clarify that none of your opponents were on council when that happened. That happened in 2020. We were there in 21. And in fact, Commissioner Ryan and I led an effort to invest $4 million in gun violence prevention, which has now reduced gun violence by 27% in the city, and we're very damn proud of that.
So, George,
Yes, Ms.
Let me
Wilson,
rebut.
You can rebut. You have 30 seconds.
despite that change, let's talk about what's happening on the street today. A decade ago, when we called for a priority 1 call, we could rely on an officer to show up in 6 minutes. Today, in your worst time of need, an accident, a person-on-person crime, an officer is showing up in 24 minutes. The overall question was about, what are we doing to address and reduce crime? We are not. It's getting steadily worse in our community. We have to act, and we have to act now.
So I'm going to ask a follow-up question here to all the candidates. So what is the plan? Because I haven't heard anything very specific. I'm going to give Mr. Wilson 30 seconds to answer.
Thank you. Next year, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to set up a network of nighttime emergency shelters. We're not going to have 5,000 people living on the street. We've already been working with regional leaders on how we're going to deliver the plan. We're going to set up 2,400 nighttime emergency shelters like we used to have in 2016. We had 1,700 souls on the street in 2016. Today, 5,300, and that's because we closed all of our nighttime emergency shelters. In Boston, they have 119 unsheltered. In Boise, they have 115. We can simply use those proven plans and implement those in Portland.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Would anybody else like to? No? Okay.
I'm happy to add a little bit here.
Go ahead, you have 30 seconds.
I think 30 seconds on gun violence?
On the rebuttal that I provided.
Then I'll pass. It's not worth it.
Okay. All right. All right, what's in? So, candidates, you will each answer the following question, starting with Commissioner Rubio. Portland has faced numerous challenges in recent years, from Occupy Portland to protests following the murder of George Floyd. Riots and protests have drawn national attention and affected the city's sense of security and community. How do you plan to address and manage future protests and riots in a way that maintains public safety while respecting the rights to peaceful assembly and free speech?
Thank you for the question, and this is something we were just talking about this week at work. I've been working really closely with the mayor's team and also with conversations with the chief's office about what we can expect and what we can plan. We learned a lot of lessons in the last several years around how to do this better. So moving forward, was very pleased to hear that the chief has made a lot of connections and had a lot of meetings with folks as key partners in advance of anything happening. So we have relationships in place. We have plans to work with community as peacekeepers in place. We have better ideas about leadership structure and how we're going to respond and how we're going to engage while absolutely preserving people's democratic rights to protest. So that's very key. And this is maintaining that careful balance, but very important balance of safety and security for everyone involved. And also what's very promising as well is that right now in development is a new business alert system around things that are happening in the community that's hopefully going to be up and running very soon. So more on that, and stay tuned for an announcement about that.
So I do have a follow-up question for you, Ms. Rubio. Will you allow the police to arrest individuals that are committing crimes on the streets when people are trying to do a peaceful, lawful assembly?
Well, when people are peaceful and lawful, then they're peaceful and lawful. If people are breaking the law, there has to be consequences for breaking the law, and that's the bottom line.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question.
Do we go to break?
Let's keep going. We're behind schedule.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
Mr. Wilson. We already said this one.
See? That's yours.
Okay, we already said.
You don't have to let them in. No, so I apologize. Let's, we're going to go to Mr. Wilson. The same question is to you.
Okay.
So would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I got it. Thank you so much, Veronica. Thank you, George. To be clear, I support protests. It's democratic. When it veers into violence, it's undemocratic. It takes away from the message of that protest. It's clearly a difference. Portland has been used as a coliseum and in some cases an octagon. That is not what Portland is about. I firmly support the Constitution and our right to protest, but not when gangs or groups go into our stores and create terror, break glass, destroy property. It doesn't help anybody's message. I'll clearly make sure that we recognize the difference between the two.
Same question as a follow-up for you. Will you allow the Portland Police Department to arrest people that are committing a crime?
If they're committing a crime, that is what their mandate is. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Same question to you, Mr.
Well,
Gonzalez.
let's reiterate some baseline. We have to have 1,000 police officers in the city of Portland. That is an absolute minimum for our city to address this long term, whether we're talking everyday crime or political violence. Why is that so important? One, you got to have some tactical advantage for police officers when you're dealing with large crowds that are engaging criminal behavior. You have to have, it's a numbers game. Two, police officers, when they're outmanned, when they're outnumbered, this is when we get the worst incidences of police officers stepping over the line. And we saw it in 2020, outnumbered, night in, day out, and it leads to stressed out police officers who sometimes make mistakes. So it's important to protect First Amendment rights, adequately supporting our police so they're adequately staffed. Second, a central component to a regional response to political violence is our mutual aid network. These are commitments with Clackamas County, Washington County, that if there is, and we should all plan for it, unfortunately, civil unrest on election night this year, Portland police have to consolidate downtown. That is a simple truth. We'll get some help from Multnomah County sheriffs, but then what happens in East Portland and in West Portland? We're going to be dependent on the sheriff's offices in adjoining counties to help support us. And we've had a really rocky road with these mutual aid networks because of the perception that our DA would not protect police officers supporting. We think that's changing. I've been supporting Chief Day in reestablishing these networks. I think it's very, very important that we lean in on that again, so our Portland police are not outnumbered at the rates they were in 2020 on election night. I do want to emphasize, I've been endorsed by all 3 DAs in the region that will be in place in 2025. It is essential that we are walking hand in hand with Washington County, Clackamas County, and Multnomah County on these tough issues. Also, we are going to bring some vandalism code as some minimum sentencing for those who engage in window breaking or spray painting. Last but not least, we cannot acquiesce in political violence. The rhetoric needs to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. One quick, yes, go ahead. Mr. Wilson, you have 1 minute.
Pardon me, did you have a follow-up on that?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
So my opponent says it's a numbers game. So let's talk about numbers. Our officers are absolutely overburdened. We have to reduce the burden on our officers. It's not just about adding police officers, which we must do. Our officers in the city of Portland spend half of their arrest time arresting unsheltered homelessness. We're trying to arrest our way out of a humanitarian crisis with our police force. There is no business with our police being in there. There is no business why anybody is living on Portland streets. Here's what happens around other nations. When you end unsheltered homelessness, provide basic nighttime care, that arrest rate goes down to 2%. Let me repeat that. 2% if you're living in a shelter versus 50%. Imagine that. By just caring for our community, we actually care for everybody in the community instead of using our officers to arrest the same individuals over and over again. We actually can use them to respond in our times of need. Yes, we need more police, but they need to be used efficiently as well. And what officer wants to spend their time arresting an unsheltered soul?
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. One quick follow-up question for all the candidates. This is just a yes or no. Do you support to defund the police? We'll start with Mr. Gonzalez.
Absolutely not. I mean, it was historic failure.
Just a yes or no. Thank you very much. Mr.
No.
Wilson? No.
No.
Ms.
No.
Rubio?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next question.
Señor Wilson, los residentes de Portland enfrentan algunas de las facturas combinadas de agua y alcantarillado más altas del país, con un promedio mensual de aproximadamente $121.68 por hogar. Portland también enfrenta desafíos y oportunidades únicos, como la innovadora iniciativa One Water, inversiones significativas en la infraestructura verde y la necesidad urgente de abordar la infraestructura envejecida. ¿Cómo planea equilibrar estos factores para asegurar que los servicios de agua y alcantarillado sigan siendo asequibles, sostenibles y confiables para todos los residentes de Portland?
Did you get that, Mr. Wilson? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so Mr. Wilson, Portland residents face some of the highest combined water and sewer bills in the nation, with the average monthly household bill reaching approximately $121.68. Portland also faces unique challenges and opportunities, including the Innovation One Water Initiative, significant investments in green infrastructure, and the pressing need to address aging infrastructure. How do you plan to balance these factors to ensure that water and sewer services remain affordable, sustainable, and reliable for all Portland residents?
So I know that water bill personally, and you're right, it keeps going up. We had a project to upgrade our water filtration system, and the first quote was $300 million. This mission overcreep now has a new filtration plant with new infrastructure closing in on $3 billion. That sort of waste would put any small business out of business. In turn, because our water rates are so high, our partnerships with other municipalities have plummeted. Tualatin has pulled out of our water agreement, which raises all of our rates because we're unable to defer or use that revenue to lower our cost. Gresham has pulled out now. They're building their own wells because our cost of water in Oregon, which is an abundant resource, is pricing us out of our homes because of water and sewer. We have to take a good hard look at that existing system and the infrastructure that we currently have and try and bring that rate down for all ratepayers, because when you add that to all the other tax burdens that we've added to the household in this last 4 or 5 years, we're paying New York City taxes and utilities without getting New York City resources or benefits. We have to bring that into line.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. So next, Commissioner Gonzalez. Over the last 2 years, Portland has invested over $300 million in infrastructure and development projects. However, surety bonds often create barriers for small construction firms trying to participate in government contracts. With the growing demand in infrastructure and housing in Portland, how do you plan to address these bonding challenges to ensure that small companies can effectively compete for these essential projects?
Yeah, it's a great question for our contractors out there, many of them minority owned, who simply can't compete because of this compliance requirement. A couple things we can look at: bond caps, that's been a challenge, increasing those to broaden the pie who can participate here. Second, the market is doing some partnerships between those who can't afford their own bonds and GCs that are larger. We are seeing some successes there, and I think we have to lean in on that pathway, making sure that those who do have access to those surety bonds are facilitating partnership for the smaller businesses. And again, we have sometimes controversially, but we have really centered increasing minority ownership of firms that are doing contracts on city projects. We report on it as a part of accepting bids every single time now. And this is a part of that equation. Traditionally marginalized contractors, but still facing some of these compliance obligations, working in tandem with general contractors who have greater capacity. I think the last one here that we need to think really creatively about is, I really want to reposition Prosper in this approach to economic development. It's tried to do a million things for a million people. And I think we can look creatively at some of the funding opportunities there in Prosper. Can this help general contractors that participate, particularly in some of our sizable contracts in the city of Portland?
Ms. Rubio, I'd like to ask you, since you're over Prosper Portland currently, what do you think of the comments from your colleague, Mr. Gonzalez?
I think that Prosper has done a really pivotal job of moving away from what was a history of displacement and gentrification. So for the time that, for the last set of years, it needed to move. It needed to do work to repair trust in community, particularly communities of color. We have a lot of wonderful, amazing urban development that came as a result of Prosper Portland when it was PDC over in the past years. So those are some good stories to tell about Portland. What the downside of that is that a lot of our communities, a lot of Latino businesses, a lot of Latino communities, Black communities, other communities of color were left behind in those. So they had to do the work, careful work over the next year to repair those relationships, to build trust, to reinvest in entrepreneurs and small businesses in BIPOC communities, and that's what they've done. I think that you will hear from some of my opponents that are also my colleagues that they need to move away from equity and get back to business. But I think that we can do both. We're in New Portland. We're all over. We're business owners too.
Thank you, Ms. Rubio. Mr. Wilson, I'll give you an opportunity. I'll give you 30 seconds if you want to say anything.
Oh, certainly, that's great. No, it's time to turn the chapter, and Prosper Portland has the right mission for the future. The Portland Development Commission, I mean, if you live in North Portland, I've got roadways, I've got railways. We did so much to North Portland to compromise our future. Look at what we're doing with Prosper now. We have 3 urban renewal areas on the west side. Great. We've always invested in downtown and east side. We now have 3 urban renewal areas east of 82nd Avenue. We're finally starting to invest on the east side. This time, we can do it with an equity lens without displacing those communities, but actually having them at the table.
Your time's up.
Can I go 30 seconds on this?
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Gonzalez.
I mean, Prosper Portland used to be an incredibly successful economic development engine in the city of Portland, generating thousands of family wage jobs. It has moved away from that in the last 15 years, and that has had dramatic economic effect. Commissioner Rubio is right about some of the history of urban renewal. We have to acknowledge that. But facing the crisis our downtown is facing the economic crisis our city is facing, we have to redeploy our Prosper Portland in a more strategic way.
Thank you.
Can I rebut or no?
We're going to get moving on to the next question. The next question is going to you, Ms. Rubio.
Comisionada Rubio, dado los problemas continuos de la congestión de tráfico, el acceso limitado al transporte público y el estado envejecido de nuestras carreteras y puentes, ¿cómo planea darle prioridad y utilizar la inversión de más de $100 millones del Departamento de Transporte de Portland para mejorar de manera efectiva la infraestructura del transporte de la ciudad?
So, Commissioner Rubio, given the ongoing issue with traffic congestion, limited access to public transportation, and an aging state of our roads and bridges, how do you plan to prioritize and utilize the over $100 million invested by the Portland Bureau of Transportation to effectively improve the city's transportation infrastructure?
Thank you for the question. And I'm going to take a little bit of my time and answer some of the previous question, which is I absolutely agree with the comments up here. That PDC did the job that it did, some good, some not so great history. Prosper did a great job up to this point, and it's a time for us to pivot and see what's new and what's next, but we can do both things. And that's why I led and oversaw the plan for Advanced Portland, which is Prosper's new plan for the next 5 years. It's an economic development plan that has a framework that's really setting the course for what we can each do from the city perspective, along with our partners in the community and the business sector. So that's very promising, and I think it gives us a good grounding moving forward. Now back to the other question about transportation. It's no secret that transportation has dwindling resource, and it is hugely dependent on the general fund. And with the gas tax, that we're reliant on the gas tax for that continued revenue and to continue upgrading all the infrastructure, we definitely don't have enough. All you have to do is look around at the roads right now. We have potholes, we don't have sidewalks everywhere, we have crumbling infrastructure. So we have to look to the state and partnering with the state about how we find new revenue sources. Because in a world where we're moving away from fossil fuels, we need to figure out how we're gonna get the priorities we need met. And what that's going to take is us really taking a good look at the budget and having to make hard choices in these next set of years until we figure out that new revenue source.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we're going to move on to the next round. This is on health and public services. So, Commissioner Gonzalez, many neighborhoods in Portland, especially in lower income areas, are classified as food deserts, where access to fresh, healthy food is limited. Are you aware of these neighborhoods, and what specific initiatives will you support, and how will you manage to increase access to nutritious foods in these areas?
Yeah, great question. Very familiar with these food deserts. We see them all over East Portland, and further east you go, the more you see. Furthermore, we're driving away retailers and grocery stores in this space by a combination of factors. One, store theft went through the roof. This on low margin businesses like groceries, this has real impacts, and we've got to confront that more effectively as a community, taking very seriously property crimes against grocery stores. Two, we've seen, and this gets back to the economic redevelopment discussion, which I think is rich and we need to continue to make space for. When Prosper was building big projects or responsible for them, it's not just housing they were generating. It wasn't just infrastructure. It was all of these places, including social infrastructure, grocery stores that are so essential to our community. And we got really focused with things like we're going to build affordable housing, which is federally subsidized for a lot of Prosper's dollars, but building big projects brings grocery stores. And so I think the combination of addressing violence, property crimes in our community much more aggressively, supporting police, getting a new DA who starts January 1, taking those crimes seriously is a factor. Second is thinking big on projects, including what we're going to do in our TIF districts, a number of which are in East Portland, to get grocery stores built. And last but not least, we're still trying to understand the impact of the corporate surcharge on a lot of these retailers, like the Walmarts of the world. There is some dispute as to whether that's really affecting their bottom line, but the bottom line is we impose a new tax on them, and we are seeing a number of them leave East Portland. And Latinos shop at Walmart too. We all do. And so it affects us all. Leave it at that. Thank you.
La siguiente pregunta es para la comisionada Rubio. Portland enfrenta actualmente una significativa escasez de instalaciones de salud conductual y de personal médico, lo que está afectando gravemente el acceso a los servicios de emergencia, así como a la atención hospitalaria y ambulatoria. ¿Qué estrategias específicas implementará para ampliar el acceso a estos servicios de salud críticos y garantizar que todos los residentes reciban atención adecuada y a tiempo?
So, Commissioner Rubio, Portland is currently facing a significant shortage of behavioral health care facilities and medical staff, which is severely impacting access to emergency services, inpatient and outpatient care. What specific strategies will you implement to expand access to these critical healthcare services and ensure that all residents receive timely and adequate care?
Thanks for the question. This is one of the biggest challenges of recent time. We do not have a working real system around behavioral health and also addiction treatment, and we're seeing it in real time happening out and playing out in our streets and in Portland. And so the city, as you know, in our jurisdiction, we don't have authority specifically over those things. We have to rely on our partners at the county and also at the state and to some degree the federal government as well. But what we do have is leverage of our voice and our legislative agenda. And we do have leverage in terms of some of the projects that are now we're having to think differently because those systems are failing. It's falling more and more on the city's lap to deal with. And for example, with the drug crisis and also with fentanyl on the street and folks that are needing services, mental health services immediately, you've probably heard all of us talk about the need for a detox center and stabilization beds and all those things. But what's very challenging is that we are reliant on our partners. So we need to have the relationship enough to have the accountability conversations, but also the ability to go to Salem and advocate and push and be vocal and make sure that we build the coalition we need to make sure those resources get to Portland. Sometimes we're seen as the big city and that we could be taking resources away from other communities. That's why we need to do our best to build relationships so that we build a real awareness of what's happening here, because what happens in Portland does affect other parts of the city or the state.
Mr. Wilson, how do you plan is different? You have a minute to respond.
Thank you. The behavioral health crisis that we're seeing on our streets is a symptom of not caring for our community. Last year alone, our unsheltered homeless rate grew 800 people, despite our city council's best effort with adding shelter. As such, we're still growing it at a rate that we cannot keep up. We're putting so much pressure on our behavioral health system, we're not able to provide any care for those souls on the street. Our hospitals, if you go into the emergency room at midnight, it is where we are sheltering our unsheltered, and the behavioral health crisis are there to see. That is not how we care for our citizens. The good news is we added 9 sobering beds at Unity just a few weeks ago. Central City Concern is adding 70 dual diagnosis beds on Burnside next year. We have 80 city team recovery beds coming online next year, and 150 treatment beds that the county is expected to add in the next year. We're adding resources, but if we keep adding unsheltered souls to our street, living in behavioral health crisis, that are arriving, pardon me, did I go?
Yeah.
Forgive me.
Yeah, to the next.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long do I have on this?
1 minute.
1 minute.
1 minute, thank you. Okay, so first thing we got to talk about is input into the system, behavioral health and medical. In Portland Fire, we launched a program called CHAT. This is to get low acuity medical out of the system. So we've got to alleviate the system of the demand every which way we can. And so addressing both low acuity and high acuity is important. We've had some success with that in CHAT program. Second, we intervened very directly in my office in how we're responding to overdoses and the addiction crisis on the streets of Portland. Your Portland Fire Bureau is on the bleeding edge of this every single day. First thing we did was roll out a pilot for alternative ambulance responses to overdoses. And you can read about it online, but basically it's rationalizing the amount of resources that are going to overdoses in our community. One example, 300 overdoses just in Station 1. We alleviated that. Second, we're doing addiction services treatment on the streets of Portland. Last, I led the fight to increase the number of ambulances on the street of Portland and working that through with Multnomah County. Very happy to see the success there. Do I have 30 more seconds?
You have 30 more seconds. I
All right.
apologize. Mr. Wilson, we're going to give you 30 more seconds too. There was an error. You still have 30 seconds left.
So the other aspect that is important is getting people out of an environment that's surrounding them with these hard drugs. I led the citywide ban on outdoor drug use. It was part of the fight at the state legislature to undo Measure 110. It is essential. We cannot continue to be putting people in an environment surrounded by these toxins.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, please, 30 more seconds you have if you want to continue.
Oh, yeah, that's great. So Mr. Gonzalez said that we need chat and fire. So let's talk about what their calls are. 80% of fire call-outs are for an unsheltered homeless issue. I spent time at Engine 23 with that station for the whole day. Went through our plan to end unsheltered homelessness. Going through their day, one of the officers was just released from a 30-day inpatient PTSD. The vicarious harm that our officers, our firefighters are experiencing is real. One officer said he doesn't have hope in Portland anymore.
Can I rebut?
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Go ahead. You have 30 seconds.
I'm glad Keith went to a fire station. I've been to all 31 in the city of Portland. It has informed my policies in this area. You put an addict or a criminal in shelter, they're still an addict or a criminal. They will still tax the system. Shelter alone, as important as it is not going to solve someone's behavioral health or medical needs or criminal behaviors overnight. It's a false promise, and it's overly shallow. Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So my response would be, if we don't want them in this place, we have to create a better place. We're leaving people on the street in Portland. We have one department handing out tents while another department is sweeping. What sort of rational approach in any civil society in our world will you find that other than a few cities on the West Coast? There's no excuse whatsoever to leave our neighbors on the street. We've got to do better. If providing basic nighttime care can assist, then we must do that, but we can't leave our neighbors on the street anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ms. Rubio, would you like to say anything?
Well, I will just say that to some degree, I agree with Keith. Slightly different. I don't think that we have any quick fixes to this answer. I don't think tent bans work. They just move homeless people under bridges or under other unsafe areas that we're trying to get people away from. I also don't think that quick fixes or quick plans, like a one-year plan, is a realistic one. But what I do agree is that it's not compassionate and it's not progressive to leave people suffering on our streets, and we need to do something about it, and we need more shelters with on-site services.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Mr. Wilson, the next question goes to you. Given the increased impact of climate change on our city, including rising temperatures, more frequent wildfires, and air quality issues, what specific policies and initiatives will you implement to mitigate these effects and ensure health and safety for Portland residents?
Wonderful. So I won't tell you what I'm going to do. I'll show you what I've done. I own and operate Titan Freight Systems. We don't use a single gallon in our fleet in Portland, not a single gallon of fossil fuels. We've begun to convert our fleet over to electric trucks. We added 6 trucks last year in August, and today in Oregon, we're still the only carrier that operates a fleet of electric trucks. It's hard and it's hard work. It's technical, but that's the hard work I've done, and that's the hard work we're going to do for Portland. We are going to decarbonize our fleet in Portland. Our goals here in Portland is to reduce emissions 50% by the year 2030. I've done that with my company. I have the cleanest fleet in the nation, and as your mayor, we are going to have the cleanest city in the nation. Happy to add more specifics if you would like. I'll go on. It's fine.
You still have 1 minute. You still have 1 minute.
So what are we going to do? We're going to convert and move out of petroleum diesel. And I'm happy to say that Commissioner Rubio led the change in our RFS program, and happy to help you with that. It was a great teamwork that we've done on that. Then we're going to electrify our fleet. We're going to use the PSEF to then convert our offices over to residential, because I've been hearing developers who want to tear them down. When we take an office building, tear it down and rebuild, we add 75% more emissions. We're going to upgrade our buildings to energy efficient operations, and we're not going to tear down, but we're going to repurpose assets in Portland. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Esta pregunta es para todos los candidatos. Cada uno de ustedes responderá y comenzamos con la comisionada Rubio. Con el aumento de los costos empuja a las empresas a salir de Portland y los desafíos que enfrentan sectores clave como los dueños de restaurantes, el comercio minorista, la vida nocturna y las artes. ¿Qué estrategias específicas implementará para que Portland sea una asequible y atractiva para que las empresas se queden y al mismo tiempo que revitaliza el centro de la ciudad, atrae a turistas y apoya el crecimiento de los negocios locales?
So this question goes to all the candidates. Candidates, each of you will answer the following questions, starting with Commissioner Rubio. With rising costs driving businesses out of Portland and challenges facing key sectors like hospitals, retail, nightlife, and the arts, what specific strategies will you implement to make Portland more affordable and attractive for businesses to stay, while also revitalizing downtown, attracting tourists, and supporting the growth of the local economy?
Thank you for the question. And we all want a thriving downtown, and we know more than anyone right now that all of us know that we're experiencing an economic slump in the city, and right now we're also experiencing a micro recession in Portland. And so what we need to be doing is turning every lever that we have as a city to incent businesses, incent tourists back to Portland. But it all starts with safety. We need to make sure that people feel safe in our city, and we already talked about that, so I won't rehash that, but that is a baseline. But we also have to change the narrative. We have to stop talking about all the problems and actually do things. We need to start putting things into action, more activation, more support for small businesses. That's why I was really proud of my work to create one of the first tax incentives in the country, really, for small businesses who decided to stay in Portland and renew their leases in the downtown core. And we have several businesses that had taken that opportunity. It's not enough, but it's a start. So we're now actively looking for other ways that we can do that. We also know that a lot of our businesses suffered during the pandemic and also in this slump of a recovery. And so we need to think about ways that we can incent more foot traffic. We can support our small businesses, and especially now as we are experiencing more and more extreme weather events in the city. When a pipe freezes or breaks, or it's too hot to start your ovens up at your restaurant, your business closes and shuts down for the entire day and maybe even the entire week. And those are like real jobs and real revenue that's coming in that supports families and the businesses. So we need to start thinking about creating a reserve fund for those tough times as well. We also need activations. And this summer we did many activations, and this winter we did the Winter Lights Festival and others. So we need to create more opportunities for things like that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you very much. How do we revive our downtown, or how do we incent small businesses to say Portland is the place I'm going to start my dream? It starts with ensuring that the businesses that we have stay, and that the businesses that we have survive and can thrive. And I want everybody to know, these are not nameless, faceless businesses. You know, we hear about Starbucks and Target and Walmart moving out. But here's what happened just in the last week. We heard that US Bank is moving out. They once were a small business. They were with us for 100 years, and now they're moving out of our downtown core. John Blumenauer, the son of Earl Blumenauer, is moving out of the downtown core. The Joinery did not renew their lease, and they're moving out. Fuego, a place that I used to get my burritos, 12 food carts closing this month. Lisa Schroeder at Mother's Bistro, is struggling to hold on because she's losing tens of thousands every month. I'm not going to talk to you about hope until we do the simple blocking and tackling of restoring safety to our downtown core. You know, here's the thing. I'm going to talk about ending unsheltered homelessness and caring for people on the street and bringing them inside, because when somebody lives in a quarter of a building and a real estate agent has to walk over them to show a tenant, a prospective tenant in Portland, it is not the way to close a deal. And that's what our real estate agents are doing every day. We need to care for those individuals, get them into basic nighttime care. and then step back. When we restore cleanliness and safety, we will welcome an influx of investment and jobs and families back to Portland. But we've got a hard year ahead of us, and I'm not going to discount the hard work we have to do next year, and I'm looking for that help from you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez, you have 2 minutes, same question.
So there are a number of components when we talk about the cost for downtown businesses and the overall environment. All businesses are spending more on private security, on fences, on protecting their business because of crime rampant in our community. That is a fact, that is a reality. So every investment we make in public safety is alleviating some of that pain for our downtown businesses. Second, when we talk about the cost, not just to operate in the city of Portland, to actually build, to put in tenant improvements, to change the use of a space, we've got to look long and hard at what we call system development charges and the cost of infrastructure that developers and builders have to put in. Anytime they actually get to the point where they have financing and want to build in the city of Portland, we have made it cost prohibitive to do so many projects in the city of Portland by adding one fee on top of another. It's part of the reason we need to be creative and thinking about not just Prosper Portland and what we're doing in our TIF districts, but holistically, some of the SDC waivers we have, how do we expand those, including for commercial development? That's on the cost side. More generally, how do we attract people to downtown Portland? We have to emphasize the creation of a place that people want to be again. That is partially cleanliness, that is partially safety, but we have to double down on large, attractive venues. That includes, yes, talking about baseball. That's the future of performing arts. These are all essential to creating social effervescence, attracting people in to stay in our hotels, to eat in our restaurants. You can't do one without the other. You've got to do the fundamentals, and you've also got to make the big things that attract people into the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I
Ms.
rebut?
Go ahead. You
It's
have 1
not
minute.
directly at him, but I want to add a little bit more onto my, so I'll use
ahead,
my
you have 1
rebut.
minute to
Okay. So I was very remiss in 3 things that I think are really critically important also for revitalizing downtown, the downtown core. We need catalytic development, and those things are happening. OMSI is going to happen. Montgomery Park's going to happen. Hopefully baseball will happen, and also other kinds of development. We also need to look at office to housing conversions, because post-pandemic, the work world has changed, we like it or not, and we have to find new uses for those buildings. And so that's why I led an effort to create incentives for developers to have reduced SDCs, as well as making some small seismic requirement changes, so that developers of certain kinds of buildings can transform these buildings into housing in the downtown. I think that is going to be part of the future. Third thing, we need to reinvest and really truly build out our arts and culture sector. It is starving and it is underdeveloped in its time.
Yes, go ahead.
George,
Ms.
so I agree with Commissioner Rubio about office to residential conversions, but let's talk about how we're doing it. So we brought forward a $3 million system development charge credit for a conversion to upgrade the earthquake. We're requiring a building to gain earthquake retrofit, which we should, but what about a developer who has a building that doesn't need the earthquake retrofit? We're actually boxing out that building when the developer could use that $3 million to make that conversion. To give you a, for instance, in Calgary, they don't care what you want to upgrade. They're going to provide you the credit, and they let developers develop. And in Calgary, in 2 years, they've added 1,200 new units of affordable housing. We've added none.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Well, let me just
Go
correct
ahead.
something.
I'll give you 30
In
seconds.
defense of Commissioner Rubio, we have created affordable housing. The problem is we're not creating sufficient mid and market housing. The problem is we're not having enough commercial development downtown. So it's just a factual correction. The region is creating what federally subsidized affordable housing, in part because of our Portland housing bond. It is not sufficient. It is not sufficient to kickstart downtown, but I just want the Commissioner Rubio and team have done some decent work on affordable housing, including Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you. I have 1 quick question. It's just a yes or no. Will you support Major League Baseball coming to Portland? We'll start with you, Commissioner Rubio.
Yes.
Mr.
With the
Wilson.
right location, yes.
We got to swing for the fences. Absolutely, yes.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to round 7. This is for all the candidates. So, candidates, each of you answer the following questions, starting with Mr. Wilson. Under the new form of government, you will be more directly involved in the daily operations of executive departments. Union workers are a vital part of Portland's workforce. Why should they trust your leadership, and what specific improvements to union contracts would you advocate for to ensure their rights, benefits, and working conditions are protected and enhanced?
Thank you for the question. The question is about form of government and how you're going to manage the city. The first hire as mayor and the most critical hire is going to be our city administrator. We need somebody with experience who's had hands-on experience running a successful city in this type of form of government. First and foremost is bring that experience in. I've got experience running a complex operation at a high level. I'm going to need some help in understanding how that new form of government is going to work. The question is about unions. The mayor announced a month ago and put out some budget guidance for next year and said that our budgets aren't going to meet the same level that they are right now. It's going to create some hard choices in the city of Portland. We've been using the American Rescue Plan money, and that's running out. We're going to have to run our city with the revenue that we currently have. And in my interviews with union and union staff, they're scared. We have a new form of government. They see the budgets falling. I'll tell you how I will run the city like I've run a successful business for decades. We are not going to do summary reduction in forces. We're going to look internally at waste reduction. We have $300 million right now that we're wasting on addressing unsheltered homelessness, 26 million in sweeps, millions in boulders or hardening water facilities, 35 million in police and firefighter overtime. And the list continues to go on and on because we're not addressing the humanitarian crisis that we could for a tenth of that level. Now, when that isn't enough, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to address contractors, outside staff. Any sort of waste we can gain and or address, we will reduce. We're not going to turn and just say, if we have to reduce budgets 5%, we do it through the personnel. We need experienced staff at Portland to help us get through this crisis. We're not going to turn and just fire staff to right-size our budget. There's so much more we can do to reduce waste.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Gonzalez, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, two components here. Your next mayor has to set the vision for the city of Portland. I will wholeheartedly focus the city on service to its citizens and not about national agendas, not about aligning with party politics across the country. It is about Portland residents providing them top-notch services to once again be the city that works. That is the vision for the city. We have to confront forcefully our public safety and cleanliness issues in the city of Portland. That can be as an unconditional commitment to confront those, to center families, to center entrepreneurs, to center seniors aging in place, and families of all lifestyles that just want to walk down the street. That starts at the top. That starts with your mayor. With respect to managing union contracts, which I think is part of this question, I'll note I've overseen the public safety bureaus in 18 months. They are all supporting me in this race. They've seen me firsthand that while I can set high expectations, that I can be ambitious for our city and the services they deliver, I'm also fair and I listen and I'll have their back when people come after them unfairly. Every public safety bureau's unions are endorsing me because they've seen what I've actually done leading those bureaus. Also important to call out that there are other components of workplace for city workers that are impactful on these bargain for agreements. In general, safety for workers, every single union I know, it's the one or two number biggest issue. You talk about wages and benefits and working conditions, but safety is always the top of the list. We lean in on that. Last but not least,
Mr. Gonzalez, let's let the train pass by here for a second. We're going to pause the time. The next question will be on the train, I promise. Okay, Mr. Gonzalez, go ahead and please continue.
It sounds like my son cuando tiene hambre. I mean, when my son's hungry. When we talk about many of our unions, we have to talk about the journeyman and apprenticeship requirements in a lot of our contracts that creates an environment that is supportive of those who invest in the future of our workforce. And so that has to be a reciprocal mutual benefit. Again, strongly supported by the trades in this race. Thank you.
Candidatos, hemos llegado.
One second. Commissioner Rubio, you also have 2 minutes to answer the question.
Okay, thank you. So we're at a pivotal moment for the city, and it's a time of like massive historic change for the city of government. And we really need a leader. We need to think really clearly. This is going to be one of the most important issues of our time. We need to pick a mayor who has the leadership experience, executive leadership experience, who has the political and policy experience to hit the ground running and not take time to learn it up because the trains keep moving. And also the relationship skills and the temperament to work with a new city council, because they're going to be learning their jobs in a new structure while the mayor is setting the blueprint for future mayors. So the skills you need in this set of time is going to be different than any other subsequent time in the city. In terms of working with labor, we have to involve labor at every step of the way. There's very little trust right now between our labor partners and with city leadership, and we have to change that directory. We have to set new labor tables. We have to revamp HR and make it more responsive to workers, and we have to set a vision for the city so that they feel a part of it and are included and have a say as well. One other thing that I think is really important to do is also to think about how we change our budget. And I know that sounds maybe wonky for this question, but it's, to me, having been on council for 3.5 years, by the time we finish one budget cycle, we're having to start up the budget again. And there's no time for reflection. There's no time for checking in with our very talented staff at our bureaus, and there's no time for figuring out what things we need to pivot on or what things are working and let's do more of that, or for good evaluation. There's also no time for real community engagement around budgeting so that we all understand the trade-offs, including our labor partners who should be looking at the same set of data that we are. So those are some very specific experiences. That's why we need someone experienced and who has the skills. And of all of my opponents, I'm the one that has the most skills.
So I want to ask the candidates a follow-up question on this, and each of you will get 1 minute. We're going to start with Mr. Gonzalez. So the question is very specific on issues in supporting the unions. Most times unions are dissatisfied, workers are dissatisfied because of executive management not adhering to the union contracts, not taking care of people. How specifically will you change the behavior of your executive management team to impact the lives of the union workers?
Well, I think there's a couple of areas of pain point right now, but we also have to acknowledge that our public sector unions are incredibly diverse. And so while there's some commonalities across them, our first responders, those on the streets, they worked the entire time during the pandemic. They're dealing with real mental illness and some other anguish as a result of going to work every day. We are having different issues with some of our office worker and office unions that largely went home, and there's an ongoing tension about how they return to the office and at what rate. So while there are commonalities across those unions, there are actually different levers that we have to pull. I think with the latter one, the ones that we're trying to get to return to the office, we have to look at more creatively at incentivizing return to the work. I'll say this about the private sector. They are much more proactive in finding ways to pull workers back in. At the city, sometimes it's just a stick, and we've got to find ways to incentivize that return. I'll start with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Okay.
You have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. You know the adage, nothing about us without us, is an absolute imperative when dealing with our unions, with the challenges that we're going to be having with the budget next year. The relationship has to be fostered together. It's something I've done, and it's a hard-won lesson that I've had over life with experiences. I would try and make decisions and force them upon my company, and often what I would find is the pushback, or those decisions or those plans would not be effectively implemented. The more I started including all voices, yes, it takes longer. Even if I had people in far-flung cities I learned to always ask them what direction we need to go. If we were in a recession, and I've dealt with many, the more I involved them, the better decisions we made, and the better the outcome of the community and or the business that we experienced. Specifically, they will be at the table with us. We will be in this together to get our city through these multiple crises that we're experiencing today.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Commissioner Rubio?
Same question? Okay.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Yes. So the question is, as far as our unions and our executive management, usually there's mistreatment with executive management, with our union workers, there's not proper representation or protections. What will you do specifically to hold your executive management team accountable?
Yeah. So I mentioned a little bit in my last answer that we need to see labor as our partner and not always that we're on opposite sides of the table. That's why I believe in setting tables with labor and convening together around common set of data. I will very much hold my leadership team to that. I think that's a value that I have and something that why I'm proud to be endorsed by several labor unions, including the Northwest Labor Council. And I have to credit them also a lot because in our regular meetings, I've learned a lot about the challenges that they face in other situations, both at the city and other places. So I know firsthand some of the challenges that they've really faced. One of the examples I'll talk about is with healthcare. That's something, rising costs of healthcare, and we're faced with a deficit now. I convened a table with labor and brokered some conversations with our management team and HR so that we could do a one-year extension before drastically making hard decisions about changes to healthcare that would affect thousands of workers in the city of Portland. I took leadership on that and led that effort, and now we're at the table again, and hopefully it will have a good outcome. But we need more of that and sooner, hence the 2-year budget.
Thank you. I have just a yes or no question. Will you continue to support telework for city employees? We'll start with you, Commissioner Rubio.
I think that we're in a new era, so yes, with certain conditions, yes, the
Thank
times
you.
have changed.
Mr. Wilson, will you support telework, yes or no?
Our city is in crisis. We're going to come back to the office. We're going to work together and build teams to address the multiple issues to get us through this city. So telework,
Yes or
only
no?
if there's a necessary reason. No.
Okay, Commissioner Rubio.
Gonzalez.
I'm sorry, Gonzalez, I apologize.
We
Commissioner
all look
Gonzalez.
alike, right? As Latinos, it's
That's right.
the answer is it depends. First responders never could do telework. They'd been working the entire time, and so your labor is the same way. So
Thank you very much. So it depends, correct?
It has to be. It
Depends.
depends.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, candidates, we have come to the end of this debate, and now you will have 2 minutes each to provide you with a closing statement. So, Mr. Wilson, we will start with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Thank you, Commissioner Gonzalez, for this discussion. And thank you to Progreso Latino for this debate. And thanks to the audience online and here as well for allowing me this opportunity. My opponents had years to build a coalition and deliver results and haven't. They've refused to follow the lead of cities who have solved the crucial issues we now face. They've wasted hundreds of millions of dollars. As a result, we've lost families, jobs, small businesses, and worst of all, lives. If you like the way the city's being run, I'm not your guy. But if you want real change, then vote for me. Vote for me if you want a mayor who isn't going to be a part of failed policies of the past. Vote for me if you want a mayor who has real experience ending unsheltered homelessness in Portland. Vote for me if you want a mayor with a plan to bring real change, to bring down crime, to build up our economy. As a citizen, I've centered the voices of others. I'm vice chair of Word is Bond, an organization where we mentor Portland's future leaders. I founded Shelter Portland, where we strive to end unsheltered homelessness in our city. As a business leader, I built the safest, most innovative, and environmentally progressive freight company in America. As a political change maker, I've led bipartisan coalitions for clean air and better transportation. My experience is vast and relevant and will meet Portland's moment of crisis. The Portland Renaissance that we all want is within our reach. Join me, and together we will repair, restore, and revitalize the city that we love. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez.
I just want to thank you all for joining us tonight, Progressive Oregon for hosting, and for those listening at home for participating in this important dialogue about the future of our city. 2 years ago, I was elected because I spoke very clearly about safety, livability, and wanting to center your local government on our voters, our taxpayers, not to fight every fight under the sun, to center city government on the crisis on our streets and services to Portlanders. I have done that every day on city council. I have led the fight and been the standard bearer on public safety day in and day out. That means taking on hard topics. How do you balance compassion without enabling? There is no simple answer to that equation. There's no simple output that makes that clear in every case, but we have to do it. That meant saying no to tent tarp distribution. That meant no to drug kits. At the same time, fully supporting Commissioner Ryan and other members on council who are pushing safe rest villages and task sites, who are welcoming shelter with wraparound services. That has to be the way forward. Compassion without enablement. I have walked that walk every single day and been unbending. Your next mayor has to be your champion. That means as taxpayers, when you're overtaxed by Metro and the county, you've got to be your advocate at Metro and county. That means when the county is struggling in overly ideological approaches to homelessness, to the drug crisis, your mayor has to be the champion. Last but not least, we have gone through a brutal couple of years. This has been a dark era for the city of Portland, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And we've got to lean in on redefining what a Western city looks like post-pandemic. I look forward to leading the city in those efforts. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Rubio.
So I decided to run for mayor because I love this city, and it's given me so much, and it's given my family so much. And I got into this race with a real understanding of what's ahead of us, our challenges. And we have a lot of work to turn our city around. But here's the deal. We don't have to forget who we are in order to change things. Because when we come together, when we lean into our values, amazing things happen in Portland. That's what we do here in Portland. I delivered positive change leading at Latino Network. And now, as your city commissioner, I'm doing the same thing. And that's what gives me hope and knowledge that our best days are still ahead of us. So how do we get there? Well, I can tell you what we don't need. We don't need any more drama. We don't need any more division or anything flashy. We just need real, accountable, and competent leaders. Leaders who know how to work together, how to build coalitions, and make tough choices to get things done. And you can tell what a leader will do by looking at what they've already accomplished. And I'm very proud of my record. I was pivotal in breaking the impasse between the police union and city leaders on body-worn cameras. I led numerous pieces of legislation aimed at housing recalibration and catalyzation. I also reformed the Portland Clean Energy Fund, which has led to millions in local investments in our local economy, and also reducing carbon. And I also, after decades of dysfunction and after great groundwork laid by my colleagues, worked to reform our permitting system after decades of dysfunction, which is now under one authority and under one team. So as mayor, you can count on me to focus on lasting solutions. And by remembering to lean into our values, not just who we are, but thinking about who we want to be. That's why I have a vision for Portland to become better than its best, and I'd be honored for you to join me.
Thank you. This concludes our debate, and I want to thank our supporters.
Esto concluye nuestro debate y queremos agradecer a todos nuestros patrocinadores y apoyadores.
ICG, Elemento Latino, and Progreso Latino. The thousands of viewers and our live audience, and finally our candidates.
Queremos agradecer a ICG, Elemento Latino y Progreso Latino, también a los miles de espectadores que estuvieron viendo este live streaming o a nuestra audiencia y finalmente a nuestros candidatos.
And we also want to say we know that we had some technical difficulties. This will also re-air again, so that way people can watch it without any interruptions. So now let's give our candidates a big round of applause and thank you so much for being here with us.